Good afternoon. Well, at least it's afternoon where I am. This is Dr. Chris Zimmer, and I just wanted to do a video to kind of clarify and give you a new date to show you why past dates have failed and give you confirmation for this new date. This is going to be a very interesting video. I've had some interesting finds that kind of blew me away, and I think they will you too. And this is about finding gold and gems north on 7/1. So previously we were looking at an 84-week timeline, and this started out last year on Nisan 1. It goes all the way till 10/31 this year on Halloween, and it literally says G206 is the end in Strong's. And if we look at April 8th, the date of the eclipse, previously we'd found 8 different pairs of day counts that point inwards towards that April 8th eclipse. 8 significant pairs, and one of those pairs kind of ties into the world population, which is 8.11 billion people right now, and that's this one I showed last time, but I just want to emphasize it a little bit that one of these day counts starts at 12/5. It's 125 days on one side, 125 on the other, all the way up to that 8/11. So the 8/11 seems to figure prominently in what's going on right now. And I don't think that's going to change until July 5th, projected to go to 8.12 billion. So we've got an outer limit there, if you will, that we have to have a rapture by that point. Otherwise, Christina's dream would be invalid. So we're coming to the end. So remember, 84 weeks. On this particular timeline, we have 8 pairs pointing in towards April 8th. And then I had to kind of get rid of some of the clutter there so I could put some more in. We have a couple of additional pairs here that I put in. But last time we looked at the 48 weeks going to 222, and then we had 84 weeks total. And if you put those back to back, you get 4884. Which is Synarpazo, 4884 in Strong's. But I noticed that you'll see it twice by pattern recognition. In other words, we have a 4884 that I showed you the last time, and now we have another one that I just spotted. If you go from 48, the day of the eclipse, and then we add another date in there, we have an 84-day count from 48 to 7/1/24. And that gives us another pair. So we have the pair that we found last time was 46 days on both sides of the eclipse. And then we had one single 47-day count. But now I'm adding another pair to it. This is 84 days on both sides of the eclipse. On the left side, it goes to 115. But something interesting happens to confirm it, because we have on the Hebrew calendar 11/5. So we have 115 twice. That confirms that this is a valid date for our timeline. And if we look at 115, that means a setting aside or a nullification. So in other words, this is here, it's a valid date, but don't look at this side. Nullify this side, because the other 84-day count is the one that goes to a true date. And if we look at some of the numbers here, we've got G38 count, a 38-day count from the last very significant date, which was 5/24. A lot was going on there, but no rapture yet. 38 days to the 7/1, holiness, sanctification. And then if we count from Pentecost Eve, we get a 44-day count to 7/1, and that's a hook or a fishing hook. So this speaks of that fishing trip. And then 47 is purity. Again, 115 is nullification, so we don't look at that side of it. Here's an interesting one. If the rapture does indeed occur on 7/1, like this is pointing to, then we'll have 122 days from that date to the very end of this 84-week timeline. So 122 is goat skin, or of a goat. And I think this is speaking about the people that are left behind. This is the remnant, or the people left behind, would be equaled or equated to, I guess, of a goat. And then last time we had the 160-day count. That was from the 524 to the end. and that was unawares and sudden. That gave us one of the two words that I started out with nearly a year ago. And then 531, of course, is a day count from 524 to 11/6/25, and that 531 is unchangeable. So those two very important words, because it speaks to the rapture date. When that finally does happen, that rapture is going to be sudden and unchangeable. Okay, so two new pairs, and in a moment I'm going to show you a third pair. So we've got two new ones we had, 46 days and 84 days. And with that date, the 7-1, we've got 4884, that's Synarpazo twice, which leads us to that date, 7-1. Well, if that is indeed the day of the rapture, we've got strong 71, which means go and bring forth, so that applies. And then if we look at July 1st is Sivan 25 or 325. If we look that up, we get I send up, deliver. So these both seem to be useful messages which speak of 7/1/2024. If we look at some additional day counts, let's just go from 12/3 last year to 7/1. That's 211 days, so that sticks with that theme of a robbery. And then it starts out with G123, which is shore or the beach, and that's the same word that's used in John 21 of Jesus standing on the shore. So we're tied into Jesus standing on the shore for that fishing trip, but we also have it tied into that robbery theme through this day count. Then if we go from 2/27/24 to 7/1, we get 125 days, very important, indicative of the church from the edge angles of New Jerusalem City, the description in Revelation if you do the calculations there, but it's also Revelation 12:5, which is the child being caught up to God and to his throne. 227 means truly. So we're looking at what looks like Revelation 12:5, truly, and on that date, 7/1. If we do another day count from 12/12, which is the fifth day of Hanukkah last year, to 7/1, it's 202 days. Now we've got that New Jerusalem City edge counts or edge angles. All three of them added together, 55, which represents Jesus, 12:5, or 125, sorry, which represents the church, and then 22, which represents heaven, added all together, and you get 202. And then 5, of course, is the number of grace. So we have some very interesting day counts tied to this July 1st date. And looking at last time, I had found Abba plus Jesus, or Father and Son. If you put them together, Strong's, they come from Galatians 4:6 and 4:7. And those, of course, were the day counts around the eclipse date. But also, this gives you G5 and G24:24. And we can add those together to get that 5/24/24 date that we found last time, which was significant. That had lots of messages around it. And as you'll see, I think in some of the messages from the sky in Stellarium, I'll show you some further. But it's not only is it a date, I think it's an instruction. If we take 5/24 and we add 24 days to it, something very interesting happens. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, so going back to what Drayton Bunyan had found back in 2023, this is about a year ago, I guess, and this is in the number pi. There's a string, 153/2023/68. And this has a couple things going on here. It's got 153 is the big fish, of course. 2023 is the reveal. And then 2368 at the end of this is the numerical value in the Greek for the name Jesus Christ. And then since it's overlapping, it kind of singles out the 68. So we're supposed to do something with the 68. Well, last year I thought it had to do with the 68s and war. And we had a war. I don't know if it occurred on 68, but it was related to war. And we had that war in Israel that begun. So, but I think there's more to it than that, as I'll show you right now. If we count 68 days from this eclipse date backwards, we get 131, which is 1121 on the Hebrew, means letter. If we count forward 68 days, we get 6/15/2024, which is 3/9 on the Hebrew, and that means holy place. So this is a letter to us regarding the holy place. And I think this speaks of the whole tree, all of those pairs of day counts that we saw for 4/8. I think they are all part of a letter telling us about the rapture, which is about to occur. But it doesn't stop there. If we count back 28 days to 3/11, which 3/11 in Strong's means delay, and we know this was a delay because the rapture didn't happen on this day, we get 28 days. 28, G28 is flight. So now we have flight delay. Literally, our flight is delayed. And if we count to the right, 101 days to 7/18, which means to join, and we saw this on the signs on 9/19 last year, which was the head, or Nishimura, being joined to by another comet to Virgo, which is a headless constellation. So we had a head being joined to the body. That's Jesus, the head being joined to the body of the church. Well, 101 days here means be impossible. So what I think this is trying to say is that by that date, 7/18, on this date, to be joined is impossible. So it's, again, flight is delayed and the joining is impossible on this day. So we've got some messages coming out of this 68 days. We have a new day count. And if we add these together, previously on the timeline, we had 8 day count pairs, which were centered on 4/8. Okay, so previously we had 8 for a while until these 3 new pairs surfaced, 46, 68, and 84 days. So if we add that to the 8, now we have 11 pairs. So previously we had 8, now we have 11. Put those back to back and we have 8/11. It's a message. It's talking about the 8.11 billion people in the world, I believe, when the rapture occurs. So let's take this a bit further. On 5/18, that was Pentecost Eve. If we do the 68-day count backwards, we get 3/11 again, which is delay. If we count forward 68 days, we come to 7/25, which is harpagmos, which is another word for rapture. So the message here is very obvious. It's rapture delayed on Pentecost Eve, 5/18, using this 68-day code. If we take it further and look at 5/24, which was the last date when the rapture looked like it was going to occur, but it didn't, we count back 68 days and we get 3/17, which is by force or constraint, which again speaks of the rapture. And then we count 68 days forward, takes us to 4/25, which is 5/24 backwards, and it means rest. So again, we're speaking of rapture. But then if we count the 24 days like this instruction tells us, 5/24 plus 24 days, then we get 3/11 on the Hebrew calendar, which again is delay. So we've got 3 different dates, that we're looking at that really look like they were going to be the rapture. And now it's telling us from this 68-day code that I just found, just made the connection, that we have 3 dates. Those 3 dates, we have delay associated with those. So they look like they were going to be the rapture, but God seems to be telling us through the number pi and that 68-day code that those 3 dates were a delay. Well, what happens if we apply this to the 7/1 date? So we're still with the 68-day code. We're looking at 7/1, which is the new prospective rapture date. Count backwards 68 days and we get go up. We count forward 68 days and we come to sincere. So it doesn't sound like a delay here now. It sounds like we sincerely go up. And if we take it a bit further and look at that 3/11, that delay day, It's a 112-day count backwards from 7-1, which means without God. So it means if you're looking at this date of delay, you're doing it without God because he's not telling you that. So this is a good confirmation. And if we go forward 101 days to 1010, where we have the comet in Virgo, I think that's a Tsu-Chin-Chan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But anyway, we have that comet in Virgo that gets birthed on the 11th. Then we're counting forward 101 days, which means be impossible. So it doesn't look like we're going to be here on that date. So this is a wonderful confirmation. We use that 68-day code. And on this fourth date, we get sincere and go up. So it looks like 7-1 is cleared for departure. Okay, so, and yours truly found another string, 726-2023, 853-6. That was last year in 2023. And Drayton had found previously 819 with a 6 hanging off of it. That was last year too, and that was from the code in John 21. So you put these together, it's telling you to look at the 6, and it turns out that the 6, if you look up Strong's G6, is Abel, and he lived Anno Mundi, and the abbreviation for that is AM. So this is a time, and it's giving us AM. The time of the rapture was revealed in 2023 then as 8:53:23, the year, AM. And then this is confirmed again by the moon occulting Venus on 4/7 at 8:53:23 AM MST, Mountain Standard Time. And looking at the stream, there's some further information here, the string, and the positions, no matter if you include 3 and the decimal point or not, you come up with 4884 in the position, and that's that word again, Synarpazo, which means to be caught or to seize by force and carry away, which is a perfect description of the rapture. So we're on the right track. And Drayton Bunyan had found that eclipse date in a string, and it's sandwiched, the date of it is sandwiched in between 84 and 44. And if we look at the positions, if we're including or not the 3 and the decimal point, we get, in one case, we get 319, 328, which means be made known, be prepared. And in the other case, by force or constraint, to be restored to a correct life. And then if we look at the 44 at the end, we get a fishing hook, or this fishing trip theme. And then if we look at another string that just has 726 in it, we have the actual date at the very end, counting after the decimal point, 4/8/2024. So lots of confirmation for rapture, and that date is pointing to it. This is the eclipse date, and that gives us all the day counts we need. Now, I want to look at it in a different way, because this actually does point us to the date 7/1. If we look at this as an instruction to add 84 days to the date, well, if we take 4/8/2024 and add 84 days, we come to that 7/1/24 date. That's the first date, okay? So this is, since it's preceding the date, the 4/8, it should be added. But if we're following behind that date, which the 44 does, then this is an instruction to subtract 44 days from the new date. So if we do that, we come to the second date, which is 5/18/24, the Pentecost Eve, and then those 47, I think it was 47 and 46 day counts come off of that. So, but this is interesting, because if we use this as an instruction, we arrive at the correct date, the 7/1, and then we're also told this is related to Pentecost. So, and if you think of it, 7/1 is, 7 is God's number, and he is the only God. He is number 1. So that gives us 7/1, but he's also telling us that he's going to do something related to Pentecost. So it looks like this is on Pentecost was the beginning of the church, of course, And then on this date, it looks like it's going to be the removal of the church. So something related to Pentecost and the Comforter. Synarpazo confirmed in another string. So if we look at it, instead of 4884, if we look at the date that Drayton had found, 8448 preceding the 2024, then of course we have 726. This is in a different string, by the way. We get 726, which is Synarpazo, and then if we count after the decimal, we get 72624, so that confirms the year. Also, if we take that date now that we know, and we back-to-back it with Luke, so that we get 1771, sort of a mirror image, if you will. So we get 1771, 2024. If we look for that in a string, we get a very interesting thing comes out in the position, 125, 24. So there's that 125 from the edge angles of New Jerusalem City. And then we have the year 2024. Okay, so that the 12:5 or the 125 relates to Revelation 12:5, which she bore male child, was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God into his throne. So this speaks of rapture. And then if we look at the numbers surrounding that date, we get 636, which is sail, depart by ship. Then we get long and far, so that speaks to the length of the voyage, I guess. And then depart, to go away or depart. And then 109, which is air, and I guess that's where we depart through, is the air. And, okay. And then a channel, fairly new channel, I guess, which is small but growing, is Riverette Heather. And she was led to see 525. This implies, of course, May 25th. So she looked up Strong's 525, which is deliver, depart. And if you consider that date, 525 to 7/1 is 37 days or 888 hours. Well, the number 8 by itself, 8 people are saved from Noah's flood. Jesus appeared to the disciples 8 days after his resurrection. Jesus rose from the dead on the 8th day, April 8th, AD 30, which is Nisan 17. The number 8, therefore, represents new beginnings and resurrection. If we look at it within 888, the resurrection of Lazarus is Jesus' 8th miracle in the Gospel of John, and the word resurrection has a numerical value of 888 in Greek, and then 888 relates to rebirth, resurrection, and new beginnings, according to BibleWithUs.com. And the book of Revelation associates the number 888 with the name of Jesus, and the numerical value of the name Jesus in Greek is 888. Therefore, it's also associated with salvation. And interestingly, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat on the 17th day of the 7th month. 17 plus 7 is 24, and 8 plus 8 plus 8 is 24. So we get a confirmation of the year. So I just thought that was interesting, that if you take that date that Heather came up with and you add 888 hours to it, you come to 7/1, the prospective rapture. Now, some of you I know you've written in the comments that you don't like hard rock or shy away from it, and I'm not really here to promote it. I just want to show you something interesting that I found regarding Led Zeppelin and their song Stairway to Heaven. They released Stairway to Heaven on 8th of November, 1971. That's 8/11/71. So we have that 8/11, the population, and also Christina's Dream, related to 71 or July 1st this year, which looks like it's going to be the Rapture, on their untitled 4th studio album. Well, they did 2 show dates close together, March 11th and March 14th, 1971, and the hours were 8 to 11 p.m., 8/11 again. And of course, the song's title is A Stairway to Heaven, something like the Rapture. And they also did one song called Moby Dick on March 11th, which is related to Jonah and the whale. If you look at the ticket in the center at the top there, You can see all that, the March 11th, 1971, 8 to 11 p.m., but there's also a ticket number, 868. So let's look those numbers up. If we look up Strong's G311, we get delay, a putting off, and this was a heck of a delay. That's 53 years. And 314 is to know certainly, and 868 is depart. So just something interesting I thought you might like to take a look at. All right, so last time I showed, what was it? The sun is centered on the line between Atlas and Secunda Hyactum in Taurus. And this was on that date, that 524 date, something very significant, because again, this is at the time of 8/11. This confirms that 8/11. Okay, so I don't think I need to go any further with that, but if we take a look at that same line and we go a little bit further into the future to June 5th, then we have Mercury centered on that line at 549.35. So if we look at some of the definitions, this is on 6.5, so 65 is wild olive tree which is wild. Perhaps that is speaking to something about the church being grafted in. I'm not sure. That's kind of vague, but it could be. It could have something to do with we, the church, being grafted in to the Jewish people. And G5, of course, is Abba, or Father. 49, as in the 49 minutes there, is purification. If you put them together, you get 549, which is go, to go away, depart. And then if you look at the minutes and seconds, 49:35, it says a few words. Well, since Abba, Father, is there, and we see a phrase, a few words, it sounds like the Father wants to say a few words to us, and he's doing it, it looks like, through this this correspondence between, planets showing up on this line. So let's go to the next one. If we look at Jupiter, actually crosses that line, and it's interesting because the numbers are, you couldn't make this stuff up. This is just amazing that on 6/14 at 222, reminiscent of the 20202, which was the time that the eclipse was total over Carbondale, Illinois, or Little Egypt, that area. It gives us that time. So if we look the numbers up, 614 means hid or kept secret. So this was for a long time kept secret until, we got close to the eclipse. And if you look up G222, it means of Alexandria, or a native or resident of Alexandria in Egypt. So another reference to Little Egypt. So I guess this is referring to that now being made known, because for a long time it had been hid or kept secret. So let's go to the next one. And this, now it starts to get interesting because we get away from Taurus, and by June 23rd, now we've got Venus is centered on the line between Mebsuta and Tejat in Gemini. So this is the first leg of the twins, Pollux, Castor and Pollux. And I think this actually, in this sense, because it's taken in different mythologies or different languages, it's taken to mean different things, but it also looks like reminiscent of the bride and the bridegroom, which should happen shortly after this, shortly after June 23rd. First off, I want to mention, this is the only one that I've done from the location of Sacramento, and this is because I felt led to change the location to Sacramento. There's only 1 minute difference, because every time I tried to look up the time for that, the time for Mazatlan, which is 12:16, I got Demetrius, the name of a silversmith and of a Christian, and it wouldn't show me, but it was in an odd place. I'm sorry, I had it backwards. It would show me 12:15 instead of the 12:16 that I was looking for. Like, you should be looking at this. So anyway, I did that. I changed the location to Sacramento, and now I get Strong's 623 is Destroyer, Apollyon the Destroyer, and with that time I get 12:15, make an oration, and to address a public assembly, make a speech to the people. So I think this is the real message that God wanted to get through, even though I kept pushing for Mazatlan. But anyway, okay, so that's part of it. There's more to go here. This is a zoom in, so just so you can see that Venus was indeed centered on the line, and Sacramento is Spanish for sacrament, commonly taken to mean the Holy Eucharist, Holy Communion, Blessed Sacrament, and the Lord's Supper. And I'm not advocating, but the Catholic Church recognizes 7 sacraments: baptism, penance, Eucharist, confirmation, marriage, holy orders, and anointing of the sick. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. But it looks like perhaps a larger segment of the church just takes it to mean Holy Communion. And if we look at 624, now Venus has moved to the other leg, and it's centered on the other leg between Mebsuta and Nukatai in Gemini. And for 624, we get belonging to Apollo. And then the time, 1552, we get manifest. So we get another message from this. And Mercury is present in Gemini, telling us that this is indeed a message. Close up, if we zoom in, you can see it is indeed centered on the line. But I also called in something interesting that seems like it might be related to this particular message. This is from a string, the 1771-2024 in pi. And the 672 part says depart, like we've been seeing here in the sky. And then also 109, which means air. So put the two together, depart and air, and soon we'll have a message. If you take a look, you'll see there was a story today about North Korea issuing a disaster warning to the U.S., and it goes something like this. North Korea has accused the U.S. of committing air espionage, there's that word air, and issued a warning that it could end in disaster. The KCNA released a statement on Friday saying that U.S. and South Korea Air Force spy planes had been spotted. It said a U.S. RC-135U reconnaissance aircraft had been identified near its southern border after taking off from Japan on May 29th. And then they made a blustering statement that says the U.S. and other hostile forces are bound to meet unforeseen disaster for their bluffing and reckless espionage. Okay, so interesting. He's done a lot of these threats, and there he's got a missile behind him. But it looks like there's something in the messages that we've just been seeing that might relate to this. We had Destroyer, or Apollyon, making a speech, and then something belonging to Apollo, perhaps a missile. And then we had Manifest, so something may happen. And then we have Depart, which is perhaps reminiscent of the Rapture. And then Air, which sounds like it's connected with this air espionage. So perhaps God is trying to tell us something about this event or this North Korean threat. Maybe it does come to pass, but it might be on the day of the departure, on the day of the rapture. I don't know. I'm just giving it to you. You be the judge. So on 7/1, the actual day that should be the rapture, Venus and the Sun in Gemini at 8:53:23 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and it looks like we have, they're right between the so-called twins, or what I think is really the bride and the bridegroom on that day. And interestingly, the asteroid Child is in Iyyar, the eagle, on 7/1 at that time. And a verse that seems fitting for this, written to the church, it's in Luke 13:34, is, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. And you can see the child is under her wings here, but you are not willing. So this seems to be a message to Jerusalem on this day. Then we have the asteroid Groom, which is in Taurus, which represents the reigning Redeemer who delivered his people from sin, and the groom, along with Jupiter in Taurus, signifies the man-child as the bridegroom. And I think this is the last one. Jongalovich, the asteroid Jongalovich 1734, is beneath the feet of Virgo, and it originally led me to Luke 17:34 and the subsequent rapture verses. So I thought this was interesting to take a look at on this day. Okay, so this is probably more interesting than all of them, because we have 4 books in the Bible that actually seem to give the day of the rapture. 2 in the Old Testament and 2 in the New Testament. So we have 2:2. 22, of course, represents heaven because there's a description of heaven in Revelation 22. So if we look at this one, it's right practically in the title. Psalm 71 has 24 verses, 7, 1, 24. There it is right there. But if we look into a prayer for deliverance, and these are just some excerpts, you'll notice that verses 2 and 4 say, "Deliver me." And those are the only verses that start out that way. So it's trying to signal out 24. And then if we go down to 20, there's several instances of deliver and help me or save me through there. But if you come to 20, shall revive me and bring me up again from the depths of the earth. So this, again, sounds like a very roundabout way of saying rapture. And then in between, in 23, this is when all this seemed to be revealed, 2023, it says, "My soul which you have redeemed." And then 24, the final verse, it talks about my tongue also shall talk of your righteousness all the day long. And this sounds like after the rapture. Anyway, 2024, and then the verses 2 and 4, 24. And then if you put the verses together with the title, you get 7:1, 24. That's number 1. And before I give you number 2, I just wanted to say there was a story, I think this was on 5:30. This is yesterday. And this is about a guy named Micah Price, graduate of Kentucky High School, withholds diploma for mentioning Jesus in graduation address. This is a very brave young man. In an incident involving religious expressions at a graduation ceremony, Micah Price, a Kentucky High School graduate, was ostensibly punished for deviating from his pre-approved speech to talk about his faith in Jesus. And then talks about at the ceremony, which was on May 24th, another interesting date. And, quote, this is what he said, "Class, before another word leaves my mouth, I must give the honor, the praise, and the glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." And there was a dispute about this, and of course they withheld his diploma, but he received it. They let it go on the following Wednesday. This was on a holiday weekend, and they let him have his diploma the following Wednesday. And one more thing I wanted to mention is that when he was giving this speech, when he talked about his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the audience applauded. So they were in with him on this. This was a beautiful story. And it's also interesting that it's very timely because Micah Price, the name Micah, leads us into the next scripture that seems to be giving the date of the rapture in Micah. So previously I thought this had something to do with Tishri. No. If you put this in with the 4 scriptures that seem to be giving the date, this is the date. This is in July. So Micah 7 is a post-rapture book, and it's 20 verses long, and it starts off with, "Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits," and that's a roundabout way of saying rapture. So right in the first verse, it's talking about the rapture, and the other relevant verses also seem to be speaking about the rapture. The verses that are left after that are simply talking about the people that are left behind. But if you look at number 1, that's "Woe is me." This is talking about the rapture has just happened. They have gathered the summer fruits, and it it kind of defines that, or kind of refines that a little bit in the second verse where it says the good man has perished or taken out of the earth. That's another way of saying they have gathered the summer fruits. So we're still talking about verses that are descriptive of the rapture. 3 doesn't talk about that. 3 talks about what they're doing. The judges are corrupt and so on and so forth. And then you get back to 4 and we're back to describing the rapture again. It says that excuse me, the day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. So again, it's back to describing the rapture. So that's verses 1, 2, and 4. Well, if you put it all together, you get Micah 7, verse 1. So there's the 7, 1. We throw in that it's 20 verses long, and then we add verses 2 and 4, or 24 to that. We get 7, 1, 20, 24. So we have the date in Micah. Okay, that was the Old Testament. Let's go to the third one. 7, 1, 20, 24. There's the date. And then we go to John 21, and this is where Jesus appears to 7 disciples. So the first verse just kind of sets this whole thing up. It just says, after these things, Jesus showed himself again to his disciples, and so on and so forth. So that's just setting up the rest here. But in verse 2, it says, Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. If you count this, you get 7 disciples total. And then in verse 3, it's not talking about them. It's talking about Simon Peter just saying that he's going on a fishing trip. So this is all related to that same theme, the fishing trip. And in 4, now we come back to counting people, and this is, but when the morning had now come, Jesus, who is one person, stood on the shore. So he's joining them for this fishing trip. So if you add this all together, you got 7 disciples, plus Jesus himself standing on the shore in verses 2 and 4, and they're all going fishing. So you've got 7, 1, 24, and they're going fishing. So this is the third scripture that actually gives the date of the rapture. Let's look at the fourth. And it does actually give it in Luke 17, but it's in a very inobvious place. But first, let's go through what we've already found. We had 2 total. 1 shall be taken and the other left. That's said in 3 verses. So that gives us 2:11, or this theme of a robbery 3 times. Then if you go vertically, we've got 2:22 and 1:11, 2 40-day counts from April 8th. Okay, lots of information there. And then in the acrostic, we have Satan. So he's the one being robbed. So that talks about the theme of all this. And then if we look at Luke 17, contains 24 chapters. 17 is overcoming the enemy and complete victory. So that led us to the first date. 5:2, 2 women, and then 2 men, and 2 men is 4. 5:2:4. And if we use the 24 chapters for the whole book, we get 5:24:24. So that's a date. And we saw a lot coming out of that. We saw, in the stars, and then we also saw day counts and whatnot. So there was a lot to that. But if we look at the final verse, verse 37, and they answered and said to him, Where, Lord? So he said to them, Wherever the body is, where the eagles will be gathered together. Well, who's asking him? He's with his disciples, and in Luke 10, shortly before this, there were 70 that he sent out into the world to preach the gospel. So he's with these 70 disciples. But if you consider that he is a part of them too, they're 70, you have to add another one and you get 71. So this makes a total of 71 disciples, including himself. And then we're in Luke 17, so you can also speak to the, that what we saw in the number pi, where 17 and 71 back to back gives a mirror image, confirming this, that this is one of the numbers. And if we put that together with the 24 chapters, we get 7, 1, 24. So the fourth book that actually gives us the day of the rapture, 7/1/24. As a thief, I showed this the last time. This is 5 scriptures that talk about Jesus coming as a thief, a thief in the night, and so on. And then Police Code, of course, 2:11 is for a robbery. We saw that the day of Pentecost was Iyyar 11 or 2:11, so we get lots of 2:11 confirmations that this rapture is going to be, like a robbery. Luke 24, Satan has already been robbed once, and this was during Jesus' resurrection. We see the acrostic for Satan being robbed, Satan 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 2:11 is in the text. Okay, so that was the first time, and then 89 without ceasing. Luke 2:11 in 2024, and so on. 2:11 in progress. This is 4 different harpazo-like words that actually say robbery 4 times in a row. So again, this is stressing that, this is going to be sudden and unchangeable. This is going to be a massive robbery of people, I guess. And 72 is in there, manner of life, and Satan is in the acrostic again. And then, okay, so let's take a look at now. We have ichthys in the sky still. The width to height ratio has changed, and now we get 2.55682 without rounding. 255 is unprofitable, and 256 is changing. Well, this is on the day of the prospective rapture, 7/1. So this means, it's no longer profitable, to try to become a part of the church, because the church is changing. It's leaving. So it's too late. 7/1/853, that's it. So, and the width to height ratio message is actually saying that. Too late. And if we look at Nishimura, which represents Jesus, he's standing on Puppis, or the poop deck of Argo Navis, that's that ship that we were looking at quite a while back. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so there's a lot of 71 imagery here. The Pons Brooks is bridge over small stream is what it means, essentially. And has a periodicity of 71 years. There's that 7/1 again. And then if we look at the lineup, we have a 7-planet lineup with 1 planet beneath the horizon, and that's Pluto, 7/1. So we get a lot backing up this 7/1 date. If we take a look at this now, not from Mazatlan, but from Jerusalem, we get a different message because we're in a different location. We have a different width to height ratio. So 4.07547, the message here is be brave and man of victory. So in other words, if you're here after this time, you better be brave and you'll be victorious, because you've got to go through the tribulation. How many estimated to be raptured? Of course, this is just for fun. We did 8.1 billion last year, and we get 1.44 sealed Christians going in the rapture, 6.66 billion left behind. And this also is about Patrick Wright's late wife, Christina, her dream. And to boil it down, he says that she said 725 was there, but no one could find 811. Well, 725 is Harpagmos, right? 725 was there. The rapture was there, but no one could find a total of 811 or 8.11 billion people after the rapture, because the world population plummets. World population today, this is on May 31st, 8.11 billion still, but rising. And it's expected, from my calculations, it changed. It was on 7.4 before, but the more data I add, now it moved to 7.5. So it's expected to hit 8.12 billion people on 7.5, which would be 4 days after this prospective rapture. So we should still be at 811 at the beginning of July. In Christina's dream, again, the interpretation revised, the rapture causes a sudden drop from a world population of 811 billion people. Now I know this is kind of silly, but I just threw it in here because it's interesting. An article, there are major changes coming for your washing machines, dryers. Government estimates that measures will shave 2.2 billion, 22, there's that number of heaven. Utility bills over 30 years. 30, of course, is when we were looking for Jesus to make his second coming. Eliminate 71 million tons. There's that 7-1. And then finally, that's equivalent to the annual emissions of nearly 9 million homes. 9 is completion. So just throwing a few numbers out there. I thought this was kind of interesting. And this is really strange. A rancher and 34 cattle killed by same lightning strike in Colorado. And, quote, it hit them all. And there are a lot of numbers in here. Colorado man and 34 of his cattle. Mike Morgan, 51, died. And this is in an open pasture 80 miles northwest of Denver. This was on May 25th. And then covered by Denver 7 News. And 100 cattle were struck. And this is interesting, emergency services were called to the scene at 2:08. Well, if you look up Strong's 2:08, it says, make of none effect. So in other words, this is God saying, nope, didn't do any good. Per Denver 7, and then after life-saving efforts, Morgan, who is one human who was killed, you put the 7 and 1 together, now you've got 70, 71, or 7-1 again. But it doesn't end there. There were 34 cattle killed, and in Strong's G34 means herd. So this is just, the precision is just amazing. And 51 is a sin of ignorance. I'm not quite sure how that applies. Maybe he wasn't saved. I don't know. Maybe he was. 80, brethren. And then 525 is depart. And he and 34 cattle certainly did. And 100 means abundance. So the abundance apparently had ended when those 34 cattle were killed. Another one, I'm not too much on sports, but this one says, Bill Walton, Hall of Famer and UCLA legend, dies at age 71. And yeah, so on and so forth. Anyway, he passed on 5/27 at the age of 71. There's that date again, 7-1. And finally, I redid this 4-7-1 for the Moon, Venus, and Synarpazo go. We got the word go. So that's the message. These are the time zones, and I hope this is the real thing. It sure, after decoding that 68 and all that in pi, it sure looks like the previous dates were just delays, and this one's going to be the real thing. I hope it is. And again, this time hope to really see you in the sky. God bless.